And I think that a lot of healing has a lot to do with becoming aware of what you're putting out there. And when you do go about your life becoming a little bit more aware each and every day, you get to a point in your life where you don't have to be as aware anymore. Inner peace can be your new default, as anxiety was one time in your life. And a lot of people start to understand this. And as long as you don't get scared of how people are going to treat you now and how they're going to take it and what uncertainty lies in the future, and as long as you get out of that story mode, you're going to be just fine. And then everything that you want will come into your life, internally and externally.
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. Today, I am absolutely honored to have the most incredible guy. I've been following him on Instagram for quite some time and listening to his podcast. He's looking around right now. But no, it's a real honor to have him on here. I'm talking to Dennis Simsek today. It's so wonderful to have you on, mate. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great, my friend, and the honor is all mine, honestly. I love doing these, and we're really gonna help a lot of people today. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And I've got an easy day as far as I'm concerned. I'm just gonna sit and listen. I got a very easy shift.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
So first of all, let me tell people a bit about you. Dennis is known as the anxiety guy, and he's tried all the anxiety cures that you could find. However, generalized anxiety turned to panic disorder, and panic disorder turned to health anxiety. It wasn't until Dennis took matters into his own hands and took all that he had learned about anxiety and used it to reverse negative thinking patterns, reframe his childhood trauma, and steer himself towards inner peace. And now he uses these insights to help others do the same. He's the creator of the End the Anxiety program, the author of Coping Strategies. Coping, Start Healing, and Beyond Anxiety and Me versus Myself. He hosts the Anxiety Guy podcast and has over 4 million downloads to date. That's a hell of a number, 4 million. He also offers the Anxiety Guy YouTube channel and has over 10 million verified views. I mean, it just speaks to how much of an issue in the world anxiety is, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Especially in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The questions from people have definitely gone up in the last 2 years in terms of how to deal with what we're dealing with. And it's just great that we have, resources such as the ones that you provide and the ones I provide. And it's nice to see that more people out there are kind of taking their journeys and they're creating resources around them for other people. So we're moving in a good direction.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's it. I mean, I think the world is different now. And I think it will always be different based on the learning that we inevitably will take from the last couple of years. And I think there are some people out there that have really realized their calling and have really had to really up their energy towards them efforts. And I think you're definitely one of the people. I've personally have benefited from what you do. So I'm really grateful that you're one of these people, to be honest.
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be here. Oh, yep.
Could you tell people that are not familiar with your work yet a bit about yourself and your journey?
Sure. The anxiety journey started very, very young. I was brought up to be a professional tennis player. So that started very, very early, around the age of 4 and 5, a lot of pressure there, especially from a father figure who really, really was determined to make me something, to create an athlete out of his son. And so, my heart was kind of into it and then not into it. And I went through my teen years kind of with a lot of emotional ups and downs. And long story short, I developed these anxiety disorders in kind of my mid-20s, what felt like was out of the blue, basically. And I got diagnosed and, well, Dennis, you have panic disorder. And I go to another doctor. You have generalized anxiety. Another doctor, you got hypochondria, and the list goes on. And next thing I know, I got all these labels and this emotional weight that I'm carrying around in my kind of mid 20s to my early 30s, and those were very dark days. Those were days where um, you're kind of living day to day. And thankfully, I had a child in my early 30s. And that kind of spurred everything on. I named the child Life. In Turkish, it's called Hayat. So because he gave me life, and after he was born, I really had a reason to kind of look at everything and evaluate the direction my life was going, and really reflect and go, you know what, you've been living a life of being very comfortably fearful for a long time, Dennis. And I think it's time to kind of see, where the holes are here, where the roots of all this anxiety really lies, and if it really is possible to heal it, because no doctor told me that I could heal it. I was told that you're going to have to manage this and cope with it. And I went through talk therapy and such, which is great for the people that need it in their, in their kind of personal journeys. But yeah, I got to this point where I started to see if I could prove myself wrong and prove other people wrong. And for a long time, I believed it wasn't possible to heal what I was going through. And then, and through the reason to kind of give it a good shot, and my son who was born, I was able to take some small steps forward. And every step, as much as it was very slow, the whole process, it did get me to where I am today. And I did not expect to be where I am today. I could tell you that much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense that you are where you are today, because I mean, deliberate or undeliberate, you have done a significant amount of work around your topic matter. I would challenge anybody to ask you a question on anxiety that I'm sure you haven't either experienced or a very researched answer.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that's quite amazing. I mean, what could you offer like a clear definition of what anxiety is and its symptoms? Because I think some
Yeah.
people might have different sort of ideas of what anxiety is.
Sure. And I think a lot of people out there, first of all, before we jump into it, I don't think they really, I mean, when you have anxiety, you think everybody knows about anxiety, but the truth is that a lot of people have no idea what anxiety is. They don't have a clue. And that's okay, because if you don't go through the journey yourself and kind of see it or just read about it, you won't really know. Um, I'll try to give a definition of anxiety. Yeah, anxiety is kind of this chronic state of sensitivity. And when we're talking about this chronic state of sensitivity, we're not talking about being sensitive towards things that you're only aware of. The anxiety is a chronic level of sensitivity around the things that we're very much unconscious about. So this is very important to understand, because a lot of people out there who think they know what the root cause of their anxiety is don't know what the root cause of their anxiety is. And a lot of people out there who think that they developed anxiety out of the blue did not develop it out of the blue. I mean, this really is one of those things where it's a domino effect. One experience leads to another experience, leads to another experience, to the point where your senses are basically so sensitized and looking out for your overall well-being and the survival so very much that it would rather deem something as being a threat rather than pass it along. Okay, kind of just pass it by, better words. So if I'm in a new environment, for example, and let's say I have anxiety, I'm told I have anxiety, I feel like I have anxiety, I have anxiety. I'm in this environment that's brand new and it's unfamiliar, and the walls are red, right? The guy's person I'm talking with is fine. The couch is comfortable. I've got a glass of water. Everything's fine, but the walls are red. My unconscious side will pick up the color red and automatically connect to some kind of trauma that happened back in the day, and off we go. Right, here come the heart palpitations. Here come the sweating. Here come the shakiness and the muscle tremors, and you name it. So, those would be a few of the symptoms. But in terms of symptoms, Johnny, I think it's important to understand that it's a combination, and it's not just anxiety sufferers don't just experience physical symptoms. It's not just the tightness in the stomach or the lump in the throat or the chronic headache. It's not just the physical. It's very much mental symptoms as well. There's a certain habitual way of keeping anxiety alive, and that's really going about your day replaying the same ideas of yesterday, replaying the same beliefs potentially of your authority figures and your parents, and having emotional symptoms as well. Having the same types of emotions each and every day, which mainly comes down to fear. So that would be my description in terms of what anxiety is, as well as the symptoms.
I mean, it sounds to me like there's a comfort in the familiarity of having those emotions every single day. It's almost like you can get used to that. It sounds like in what you're describing.
You got it. But you tell somebody this and they'll say, you got to be crazy. There's nothing more that I want than to overcome my anxious state. Nothing more. Okay, well, how would you deal with change if it actually showed up today and you woke up tomorrow morning anxiety free? Well, I'd be a little uncomfortable. It would be a big change in my life, right? I'd have to learn things all over again. Okay, well, I think I've proved to you that, healing anxiety isn't the hardest part, right? I mean, you already know enough. You already have the skill sets, right? I mean, you're a master at what anxiety is. I tell a lot of people this. What you're really dealing with is the fear of the unfamiliar. You're dealing with the fear of change. You're dealing with the fear of uncertainty, right? So let's put the anxiety aside. Let's deal with when this fear of uncertainty arose, right? And when you lost your self-worth. And many times when we start to deal with that, people start to go about their day and go, something feels weird here. I'm not. What happened to the mental chatter? So, a lot of people start going and looking for it. You start looking for it, you're going to find it, right? So, yeah, it's a state. It's a pattern for sure. There's a bunch of them.
I just find that, like, the irony of that is that the anxiety is actually the fear of the unknown, which is the unknown is actually you changing that anxiety behavior. It's like a real vicious circle, isn't it? You can see how someone can get caught in that and not know how to get out.
100%. In fact, there was a person a couple days ago that I was talking to, and she came to me frantically. You wouldn't believe it. She came to me frantically and said, Dennis, I feel healthy. I said, what's wrong with that? She's like, I don't know what to do with this feeling, right? Like, I feel physically healthy. I feel like I have energy. The fog has lifted. I've listened to a video or two of yours, and here I am, right? I don't know what to do with this new feeling. A lot of anxiety sufferers don't know what it's like not to live with a chronic state of stress and anxiety. So when it does happen, consciously and unconsciously, they'll pull themselves back into that familiar state.
I think that is such a vitally important piece of knowledge. I really do. And that people can actually be like, let's say, well, or feeling better, or not experiencing anxiety. And that in itself can be quite scary for them because it's so unfamiliar. Wow. Yeah. What are we, 10 minutes in? I mean, already blowing my mind.
the fear of feeling better.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I'll tell you honestly though, a lot of people aren't going to get this at the beginning. You really have to. There's people out there that may be listening to that and going, "This is crazy. I'm going to shut this off." Well, yeah, anxiety healing and the spiritual growth that we're all on. It's really is a ladder system. And a lot of people aren't ready to hear some of the things that we're going to talk about today. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, it's like that. I had a proverb once about a son saying to his father, Dad, every year you get smarter and smarter. And it was the child's awareness that was growing, not the father, and I really love that. It's a lovely little proverb. What do you feel like ultimately causes people to experience that anxiety? So sort of like not necessarily the triggers, but the sort of what sort of events in people's lives can sort of embed themselves and create that long-term experience of anxiety?
Yeah. You can ask 50 different, influencers or coaches the same question. You'll probably get like 30 different answers. Depending on how far they're along down the red pill. But I, after all these years, have come to the conclusion, and I'm still, of course, checking it all out, doing studies and doing what I can as a coach. But I think childhood trauma between conception and the age of 5 has a lot to do with it. And I'll tell you why. Because when I work with someone and they don't really, they don't know where we're going when we work together, right? I'll bring them back to times when they were in the womb, for example, right? And they'll go, "This is crazy. No, it's nuts. This is way out of my comfort zone." Well, you're here for a reason, right? And intuitively, I'm led to bringing you here, so we go there, mainly in a hypnotic state, right? And so they're in the womb, and mom and dad are fighting, and mom has the emotional experience throughout those 9 months, mainly defaulting to fear. How are we going to afford the child? Am I going to have a relationship with the husband? Am I going to have to, ask somebody to care for the child? What am I going to do? Also, as the mother goes through all these feelings and emotions, so does the child. Plain and simple. So we bring the person back to the womb. We show them exactly what's going on, or the age of 2 when they experience the experience of the toys being taken away from them while they're in the bath. Highly traumatic for sensitized people coming into the world after those first 9 months, or potentially generational trauma, past lives. We can go really deep with this stuff. We don't know, we can assume. But staying in the trauma-filled world in this lifetime, I think it has a lot to do with conception in the age of 5, when you got this blank canvas and you can paint whatever you want onto it between those years where the kid's just super suggestible, right? And so it's like buying a new computer, right? You put whatever you want on it, right? You got all the apps at the front and all the notes and stuff like that. And it's very difficult to delete if you don't have the right software. So I believe it has a lot to do with conception in the age of 5. I think as we move on, the age of 6 and 7, I think we're still very, very creative and imaginative. At that point, I think we have a very good blueprint of who we are and what life is about. And I'm a big believer that we go about the rest of our lives basically living out that blueprint each and every day until there comes a point where we say, "Oh, this is wrong," right? So on. But I'd like to think that I'm pretty sure conception to the age of 5, and then just building from there.
Yeah, I mean that resonates with me quite a bit. I mean, for whatever reason, my son has a lot of anxiety, and he has recently been diagnosed with autism. And I know lots of people have lots of different opinions about things like that, but for what we got him diagnosed because it would be helpful with his schooling, that it gave the school some evidence to help him and to support him in the way in which he needed. But I sit back there just then listening to you, thinking about some of the choices that we made as parents. And we always did things out of kindness and love, obviously. But sometimes when you're a desperate, tired parent and someone suggests something like controlled crying, it's only now that I sit here and he's a bit older, I look back and it literally makes me feel sick thinking about just leaving him in the room crying on his own. It's just so not what he needed, and you wonder what impact that has on them, as they get older. What did they learn in them moments when they were crying in the dark and nobody came,
Right.
Right. So you can see how that would have a significant impact.
100%. Like from the adult's perspective, it's really not a big deal, but from the child's perspective, it's emphasizing who they are and what they believe life is. So they go about life thinking, what's the point of being happy, for example? Right. What's the point of what's the point of having these new toys around me if they're just always going to be taken away from me? These sorts of things. So that's, I believe that paves the way for devaluing ourselves and the low level of self-worth and all these other emotional disorders that we go through later on in life. Not always, but a lot of the times. And when people start to clean up their past, I've seen it over and over again. The present tends to change, and they're out of survival and into a creative space when it comes to their future. So yeah, cleaning up that past is quite important. But the first thing is to be open to the idea that this has something to do with experiences. We don't even have to call them traumas, just experiences where something happened to me. I didn't like it, and I stored it. I stored it in my mind. I stored it in my body, and here I am as an adult living it out.
Yeah, and you allow them experiences to sort of pepper your world, don't you? And to show you how the world is. You start to make sense of the world through the lens of that experience, I expect, which is a quite significant learning, I think. I love that what you just said, clean up their past. I've never heard that before. That's pretty amazing. I love that. I really do like that.
Yeah, exactly. Clean up your past.
When someone is experiencing anxiety, so someone's having a morning where, I don't know, they maybe had some drinks the night before and they've decided to wake themselves up with a double espresso, which sounds like the perfect recipe for anxiety to me.
Perfect remedy.
What can they do in that moment? I mean, I know there are long-term strategies for anxiety, but in that moment when they're really deep in that experience, what sort of things can they do to help themselves?
Okay, so before focusing on what a person can do, I think it's very important that you actually hit the pain button enough times that the person actually wants to change who they are and how they feel. Until you rev up that pain button, I don't believe that anything you do will actually make a lasting difference in your life. I truly, in my heart, believe that because I went through it. Other people have went through it. They're only going to be temporarily suppressing symptoms. And a lot of people want to live there, and that's totally fine. But if you want to heal, you got to get to the point of what I call no return, where you're actually, ready to grab the end of a sword in order to heal with both hands. So it's important that the mindset is there, okay? And it's important that you understand that it's okay to actually go through what I would deem as being, setbacks in a lot of ways. If you did have drinks the night before, and if you did have an espresso in the morning, these are setbacks based around the decision I've made to change my identity and my core beliefs. And it really starts with mindset. I've found that a lot of people who have almost teetered with obsession in terms of their healing, at least in the beginning stages, get the most out of what they do for themselves. Whereas if somebody does the same thing for themselves and hasn't really gotten to the point of no return, then they're going to go, well, it didn't work for me, right? And it's not like it didn't work for you. It's the fact that you're so invested in who you are and your core beliefs that you haven't, there's no way for this method to work for you or for this technique to work for you because of that particular reason. So the first thing is mindset. You want to get to a point where you come first before anybody and anything else. Career, other people, even your kids. You can't care for your kids to the point that you really truly want to until you start caring for yourself. That's what I believe. Yeah. So mindset is going to be very, very important. But when you wake up in the morning and you got the espressos and such, I would start drinking some good filtered water. Like that's a pretty good place to start.
Prevention is better than cure.
Right. Like let's start somewhere here. And honestly, I would, you're gonna be revved up. You're gonna have energy. I would start to perceive that energy as something that you can use for the benefit of you rather than the deterioration of yourself. And a lot of people take that energy and become more negative, possibly. They beat themselves up. They overwork, for example, and you can use that same energy to express yourself maybe with other people. Maybe talk about your feelings a little bit more, or go get a good workout or an exercise routine going. You can use that energy in that moment after those espressos for good purposes. So those are places to start. And then, of course, it's about cleaning up the past and gaining skill sets to counter anxiety in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. So to summarize, it's sort of put yourself first. Make sure you're putting yourself first. If it's like that analogy they use for aeroplanes, isn't it? Tend to yourself before you tend to others type thing. Prevention, yeah, just looking after the things that you do that don't serve you, don't benefit you at all. And then lastly, sort of focus your energy in the right direction. Just as you say, like, people do spend a lot. We've all met that person where you say to them, morning, how are you? And then they tell you that life's problems. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay.
Never ask that again.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. You do know that lesson, don't you? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And that's great advice. I love that. Thank you for that. I'd like to get a bit deeper into the causes of anxiety, specifically around anxiety stemming from trauma and belief systems and gaining awareness of the learning from that behavior. I wonder if you could talk a bit about that, because I'm a sufferer of, not a sufferer, I've had some significant childhood trauma myself, and I'm working on that journey now. And going back to what you just spoke about just now, a friend of mine and I, Patrick, we talk about that very important question we asked was, have you had enough pain yet? Because until you get to that point, I'm not sure you're, like you just said, I'm not sure you're quite ready, are you? And you have to have just had enough of living the way you do,
Exactly. I mean, the important part of that question as well is when you say, yes, I've had enough, you start to open yourself up to lessons that you wouldn't be aware of if you weren't ready. The filter system going on in the brain starts to go, okay, well, this is new, now I guess we can, take in this information, or we can do this, so that decision is very, very important. In terms of trauma, though, I believe that every single day we wake up in the morning, we run a certain set of habitual ways of thinking about the day. And then we attach feelings to those ideas, and we say, yeah, this is going to be true because I've experienced it over and over again in the last couple of weeks, months, years of my life. There's enough evidence there. This is all unconscious evidence there to prove that today is going to be very similar to the anxiety days I experienced recently. And they're right. Okay. So with those habitual ways of thinking come certain ways of perceiving things. I go to work, Janet, I can't stand her. She's going to raise my anxiety levels, yada, 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 perceptions. And with perceptions come actions, and so on down the road. But what's very important to understand is that when you start to feel the same way every single morning and afternoon and every evening, you're actually unconsciously running a certain slideshow in your head. And that slideshow is basically creating these self-fulfilling prophecies within you. So with every image that you run through your head on what you're about to expect throughout the day, you're about to manifest exactly what it is you're imagining based on how you're feeling. Because I believe the universe doesn't read our thoughts so much or our behaviors. It reads more so how we feel and our emotional states. So if I'm always in the emotional state of being anxious, then the world will say, okay, well, there's no sarcasm here, takes it very literally. Okay, we need to align the world, external and internal, based on anxious, because this is the message we're getting. So this is very much an energetic and spiritual journey as much as it is, the mental health and the CBTs and all that other stuff. So you wake up in the morning, and instead of unconsciously imagining the worst, you know what you do? You consciously imagine the best. And then you just leave it alone. Okay, you don't go and check the results. You don't say, is this working for me? Right? Is it going to happen? Oh, I really hope it happens. Because that way, again, you're gripping to certainty again. If you're gripping to certainty, healing anxiety becomes very, very difficult. You have to embrace the uncertainty in order for those two to be balanced, right? So you leave it alone. You wake up in the morning and you run certain conscious images and mental movies in your head of what you want the day to look like. And you take this as a certain skill set. And then a couple of weeks go by and you go, I'm thinking about X a little bit differently. And in this situation, I'm acting a little bit differently. And you start to see, the fruits of your efforts. So, trauma back in this, without going too deep into it, this actually is one of the things that I use quite often, which I've termed as being emotional reframing. You can emotionally reframe your experience in the wound. When your toys were taken away from you at the age of 2, at the age of 5, when dad left you alone in the corner. These are all things that you can emotionally reframe. And if you can imagine it with the right amount of feeling and certainty, you will manifest into the identity that you desire and that you deserve to be. So
I love that, because it just speaks to that we identify, don't we? We attach. Like if somebody is anxious and they're anxious and they're always telling you're anxious and they're always saying, I can't do that because I'm quite an anxious person. Like even that statement, I'm an anxious person, you are telling the universe, you're telling the people, the places, the things in your life, I am anxious, treat me this way,
Exactly. Yeah. Words are powerful. Words are energy, as my fiance would like. And it's all energy. It really is. It's all part of the bigger piece of pie. And I think that a lot of healing has a lot to do with becoming aware of what you're putting out there. And when you do go about your life becoming a little bit more aware each and every day, you get to a point in your life where you don't have to be as aware anymore. Inner peace can be your new default, as anxiety was one time in your life. And a lot of people start to understand this. And as long as you don't get scared of how people are going to treat you now and how they're going to take it, and what uncertainty lies in the future, and as long as you get out of that story mode, you're going to be just fine. And then everything that you want will come into your life, internally and externally. So, important point.
That's another brilliant line. Words are energy. Love it. Because you're right. I mean, right now, I could have a conversation with you. I could make you laugh. I could make you angry. I could make you cry. I can provoke emotion simply with the words I use. So it's important to think, if I can do that to somebody else, surely I can do that to myself. It's like I said to clients so many times, like, don't be surprised when a sad song comes on, you feel sad. Because it's literally what it's supposed to do. So can repeated experiences of anxiety lead to feelings of not feeling safe in your own body? Or can you start to have a lack of trust towards yourself? And how can people sort of overcome something like that?
Yeah, I mean, trust would be one of the most important ingredients when it comes to healing anxiety. I tell a lot of people this: when you start to, for example, trust in your relationship and you overcome the jealousy, that's going to have a lasting effect in the workplace. That's going to have a lasting effect with your health-related anxiety, and so on. It's all a domino effect. So trust is a very important component, and anxiety sufferers don't trust. They don't trust in their bodies. They don't trust in the future. They don't trust in the unknown. They have a very difficult time trusting in things. So it's very important that if anybody out there is suffering from anxiety, it's very important that you start giving things a chance, number one. And number two, it's very important that you give new ideas a chance. Instead of, having a new idea kind of pop up in your head that says, I am capable, or I am healthy, or I can, make this much, or I can experience X. and kind of running from it and going back to your regular default mode. Instead of doing that, spend more time on what feels vulnerable to you. Because vulnerable is that door that we have to walk through in order to heal anxiety, almost on a daily basis. So trust is very, very important. You need to build trust. And when new ideas come around, you need to befriend them. You need to spend time on them. It's very important that the day doesn't take over you. It's very important that you check in with yourself and say, in this very moment, at the workplace, in this very moment, when I've come home and I've put my feet up, in this very moment, am I being the kind of person that I'm working towards? Am I being the kind of person that I'm working towards? And if the answer is no, change it. Do anything different, anything. Because as you mentioned, some of the most important words that we tell ourselves come after the words I am. Right? And unconsciously every single day, because the doctor has diagnosed us with generalized anxiety, most of our I ams are I am generalized anxiety. It's not I am doing certain patterns causing me anxiety. It's I am generalized anxiety. So in healing, we start to kind of disidentify from that. It's like I've said before, where a soccer player for a long period of time, all of a sudden decides they want to be a tennis player and they suck at tennis. Right? It's like, oh God, I want to go back to soccer, right? It's familiar for me, even though I do a lot of suffering in soccer because the competitive level is so high and such. It's a familiar kind of suffering that's different than this new kind of suffering. So I'm going to go back there. This is kind of what we do unconsciously with anxiety. It's kind of this pinball thing, going back and forth. I'll try this, and I'll go back. I'll try this, I'll go back. This was me for many, many years.
Well, there's a saying, isn't there? Better the devil you know.
Yeah.
It's that's literally a saying, isn't it? So
Right. Exactly. And so trust is very important. Spending time in that vulnerable place is important. And you're going to find that a lot of clarity and epiphanies start to arise in your life. When they do, don't be afraid of them. Go directly towards them, because this is what you truly want.
yeah, and I mean, I think it's like people will take that sort of feeling of discomfort and label it immediately as it can't be a good thing because I feel uncomfortable. But I've described to friends, as that feeling of vulnerability is like knowing that, excuse me, knowing that where you want to be is on the other side of a thorn bush. And then you ask the person, well, how can I get to the other side? Where's the gap in the hedge? And you're like, no, you got to go through the thorn bush, and that's it, isn't it? It's that feeling of like, all right, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to feel these uncomfortable feelings, but I still want to get there though.
I can't tell you how bad my anxiety symptoms got
Really?
within those first, initial months of healing. They got a lot worse before they got a lot better, because that subconscious mind, that inner child, really doesn't do well with these extreme types of change that you're introducing into your life. So defense mechanism after defense mechanism after defense mechanism will show up. Things like, you'll have an idea that says, I don't have a coach, I don't have a therapist, therefore I can't heal. I tried my best today. I'll put this aside. I'll try again next week. All these ideas, even certain behaviors, things that we say, these are all defense mechanisms from the subconscious trying to keep you in a familiar state of anxiousness. But as long as we recognize that is what it is, then we can start working.
Yeah, and what I like about what you're saying is like there's no battling, there's no combating, you're accepting it. You're just saying it's okay, and it's like you would speak to, or how I would speak to my children. Just reassuring, just saying, hey, it's all right, it's okay. Because I heard somewhere once, when we take away those difficult experiences for children, we also take away the growth. And I think that can be true as an adult, can't it? If we don't, most of the things that were worth getting were quite hard, and there was a level of discomfort that come with it. So I love the way you put that. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
If people experience anxiety frequently enough, can it be part of their challenge to sort of that they do begin to identify with it, and they, like I said earlier, they become that anxious person, and how do you sort of reframe that? What are sort of the tactics you could take to reframe that I'm not an anxious person? Or
Yeah. So first things first, feelings are the decider stage. So depending on what you feel, will determine what your future looks like and what you look like in the future. So no matter what you do, first and foremost, on this healing journey, there has to be a certain degree of feeling connected to it, okay? Because all these techniques, none of them work until you start attaching feeling to them, at least from what I've experienced. Honestly, I would get really good in the imaginative department. I use a lot of imagery with people, a lot of imagery work. I do a lot of breath work with people. So the allowing the anxiety sufferer to understand that they have permission to slow down their life is huge. You have permission, to get up at 8 a.m. And although your work is at 9:30 and you keep showing up 30 minutes early, because you're so anxious, it's okay to go at 50 to 70% of your normal speed throughout this morning. So you give yourself that permission to go at that speed. The shower, you take a few more minutes. Driving, it's a bit slower. And then all of a sudden you come in contact with this feeling. And this feeling is kind of this feeling of this state of kind of calmness. It's like, wow, I'm not rushing. So the most important thing for anxiety sufferers is to understand that you got to give yourself permission to slow down. Not just slow down, but give yourself permission to slow down. Because the very act of rushing is there due to the reason that we don't want to make more mistakes. We feel like during our childhood, we made so many mistakes and our authority figures put us down so many times and told us that we should be doing things this way and not that way, that we don't want to make more mistakes in our life. So here we are as adults, we get to work 30 minutes early. We have this perfectionist attitude where we call ourselves, I am a perfectionist. Well, not really. You're not a perfectionist. You're doing things that make you feel like you're a perfectionist, yes, but give yourself permission to slow down your life in every single aspect of your life that you can. Slow down the way you talk, walk, drive, shower, especially eat, right? Eat without distraction. Do these types of things. Secondly, when it comes to trauma work, as I mentioned, imagery is very, very important. Emotional reframing is what we tend to do in our little community. We focus on going back into previous experiences in a safe way, not a re-traumatizing way, which I have certain techniques for. And we allow that adult, child in the scene, in the environment all together, adults right there present, we allow the adult to give the child permission to express himself or herself. Okay, and when you're in a state, when you're in an alpha state, when your brain waves have in fact slowed down, and you're not rushing through the experience, and you are communicating with the subconscious mind, you have slowed things down. This is a very real process. The brain, the body doesn't know the difference between what you're imagining and what's actually taking place in the physical reality. So emotional reframing with the guidance of your present adult to the child, very, very powerful. I'm talking like I've had experiences with people where we had one session and a lifetime of trauma would pretty much be replaced with a lifetime of safety, right? Because at that point, in the present moment, they come back to me and say, well, around that person and around similar environments, my body doesn't seem to be as jumpy. Exactly, because what are we trying to do here? We're trying to show the body that The reality that you live in right now is safe, and it's not the same as it was when you were a child, right?
Yeah.
So we do emotional reframing, very, very powerful, clean up the mess. We do a lot of things in terms of physiological work, not as much mental work. You'd be surprised. A lot of things with your body, like slowing down, like giving ourselves permission to make mistakes. I tell people sometimes make mistakes on purpose, right? Grab that plate from the kitchen, right? Throw it down and yell, Opa, right? and make it a game, right? Allow your own inner child to realize that that's not a mistake anymore.
Just don't let the kids see you do it.
Don't step on it, right? Clean it up real fast. Okay. So those are the types of things we do, and I would highly recommend looking into at a deeper level when you are at the point of no return.
I got goosebumps through that. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic advice. It really is. I could see how that would work. That must be so amazing for you as well to witness those changes. That emotional work must get quite emotional for everyone involved.
You can literally see that 4,000-pound bag that the person's carrying in their body pretty much disappear.
Wow.
And as you watch them, the shoulders start to droop, they start to feel lighter. They start purging, they start crying, they start sweating and shaking. These are things that a lot of people are scared to do, but is necessary because healing can be quite messy. Right? And then you got to embrace the messiness. So.
I've never thought of crying and sweating and shaking as purging before. That's another learning. I've got some great wisdom here.
Start crying.
Yeah. Well, because it's something I face challenges around. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting one. Last couple of questions. I mean, how can people get off that sort of proverbial hamster wheel of overthinking, or my preference, unhelpful thinking?
In terms of the thinking pattern, I think the first thing is to realize what direction it's leading you towards. I think it's very important that before you do anything, you have to first have the right mindset going into it. And the mindset in terms of your thinking is, hey, if I continue with these patterns, where am I going? What's my life going to look like 5, 10 years from now? Am I going to be on my deathbed many years from now going, I'm glad I lived a safe life? No, you want to be on your deathbed going, I live incredible memories, and I'm so grateful, and I'm basically going to create non-resistance in this very moment when I go, which is the way I hopefully will go, hopefully much later in life. But
yeah.
But in terms of thinking, it's very, very important to recognize what direction it's leading you towards. Number one. And then it's very important to differentiate between replaying and actually thinking. Replaying is replaying the same ideas of yesterday and your authority figures. Thinking is actually a conscious act, right? Thinking would be something coming from you based on your experience as an adult. Replaying would be an unconscious act coming from the inner child trying to keep you anxious, or at least in a familiar state. So you need to go, this idea here that's making me anxious, this is in the replaying section. This idea here, this is in the conscious section. And I don't have much experience with this idea, but in order for me to have a better life, I got to make this one stronger. In order to make it stronger, I have to take the formula I used to get to an anxious state, right? What's the formula I used to become anxiety, right? Well, I practiced pretty much 24 hours a day, even while I was sleeping, right? So like whether I knew it or not, that was me. So practice has a lot to do with it. Feelings have a lot to do with it. And you have to be certain in these new ideas. If there's no feeling of certainty, it's going to get very, very difficult. I am certain that this new idea is true for me. That old idea is my mom's. That old behavior is my dad's. I picked it up without even knowing it. This idea is mine. This behavior is mine. And no matter what anybody thinks or how they reply to me while I'm going through these things, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Because I'm not going to live by the pressures of society for one more day. I just can't, right? So That's the direction I would take. I would put those thoughts into two different groups.
It's funny, you talk about visualization before, and I got a real strong visualization of like your parents driving the bus that you're on, and then
Mm,
you just decide to take the steering wheel one day and drive your own bus, you know, and
right.
that's
So
the
you're
sort
in
of
the very
vision.
back seat, right?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
you're going up slowly.
That's it. Just at the mercy, or, you know, they're taking you what direction they want to take you, what destination they want to take you. They're picking everything, and you're just a passenger. And I think it's that feeling of like going, well, actually, I'd quite like to drive this bus, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
And with loving intentions, right? I mean,
yeah.
if you think about mom and dad, and they're doing the best they could with what
Oh
they
yeah.
lived through. So, it's very important that we because the whole anxiety thing is getting rid of blame and guilt at the same time as well. So, exactly, I couldn't have put it any better. Driving your own bus, yeah. Whether you want to kick mom and dad off that bus or put them in the back seat, that's totally up.
Oh, it sounds fun putting them in the back seat, right?
Exactly. Put them in the back seat.
That sounds quite fun. I mean,
Exactly. I mean, you're going to have to go through that experience during these family dinners and such anyway,
yeah.
right? So that's pretty much like you driving it and them watching. So,
I mean, part of my trauma was my father was very abusive as a child, hurt myself and my siblings and my mother, and one of the biggest sort of lifts for me was stopping the hate, was just letting go of like and realizing, you know, I can't go quite as far yet to say forgiveness, but realizing that actually he was doing his best. He was given some tools that didn't work, and he was sort of using them on me, and you know, that that blame doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you anywhere. All what's better to focus on is a friend of mine named Nikki Hill. She says it's better to focus on the impact. What impact did it have, and how? Because you can work with that, right? You can
because you're
work
a
with it.
father now.
So yeah, well, so that was when it all came crashing down for me, because all of a sudden I had a new perspective that I couldn't possibly have had until I was a father. And once I was a father, I was like, whoa. All of a sudden I was like, yeah, this is kind of hard, actually.
Right.
This is quite hard. I can see how
Yeah.
people could. I mean, I can't see quite how my dad, to the levels my dad did, but I can see how you can be frustrated and tired and all them sort of things.
100%.
But I mean, just the last question really is, have you got any sort of advice or guidance that you'd like to pass along to people that's helped you when it comes to self-development?
Yeah. And it's gonna be something that you've heard of before, but it's very important that you are certain in the fact that you can heal. Okay, no matter what happens throughout the day, you're putting into practice your new knowledge, your new wisdom, information, knowledge, wisdom, such as what you're listening here and what comes to you spontaneously. It's very important that you are certain that you can rid yourself of what it is you want to rid yourself of, which is what we're talking about is anxiety. That level of certainty cannot be brought down, no matter what happens. If something happens and you call it a setback, like you said, there is a potential for you to learn from that setback and get yourself back on the right path. There is a potential for you to take certain experiences and go, this is something that I can use, or this is something that I can take from this, or that person taught me something. There are those potentials when you are certain that healing is possible for you. And it doesn't matter how experienced you are or inexperienced you are, that doesn't matter. Go through every single day knowing that this healing is on its way, and make sure that you are aware of the fact that you're focusing more on the process that you're in rather than the results that you're getting. Because I made a huge mistake for years focusing on, oh, I did a meditation. How am I feeling right now? The same. Meditation sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I went to a coaching session. Oh, did they listen to me? No, there was this one moment where the person was looking somewhere else. This doesn't work. You could see the inner child defense mechanism show up. Be certain about your healing, number one. And I promise everybody out there that when you go through your days with this level of certainty, I'm not talking about believe in yourself. I'm talking about certainty in the healing process. Okay. When you go through your day with this level of certainty that it's on the way at the time it's going to be on the way at, things start to get placed in front of you. Okay, the right book falls on your lap. The right information is told to you. All of these things start to happen when you've got that level of certainty in your healing, external, internal.
Great advice. Really great advice. Yeah, love it. You're right, though. You're so right. It's like when you go to the gym, if you want to get into shape, one session, you're going to notice nothing. Two sessions, you're going to notice nothing. But you take a good look in 6 months' time, you're going to see a lot of difference. And I think that's a great way to look at it. I think really, really good. Thank you so much. I mean, this has just been brilliant. I not wanted to end. I could listen to you all day. completely honestly. But you're like, no.
We're gonna do it again.
Yeah, we must. What's next for you, and where can people find you?
Okay, they can find me on YouTube under the Anxiety Guide. I would start with that content. They can find my podcast, the Anxiety Guide podcast, on the different directories or theanxietyguide.com. They can go there and they can reach out to me. Want to contact me with a question or something you're going through? I answer almost every single question. And sometimes there's a lot of questions, but I try to get all of them. And what's next is I'm writing my fourth book, and I'm not going to give away the title yet, but it's going to be big. It's going to be very informative, and it's related to one specific niche that a lot of people know that I'm familiar with. I won't give it away, but I'm working on the fourth book right now, and there's 3 books that people can pick up on Amazon if they want to learn more about these ways of healing anxiety and healing, in different ways as well. We're not just talking about anxiety, but a transformational kind of journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. I never brought it up during the conversation, but you're out in Bali, aren't you? So you're just so lucky. You're just so lucky. I've never been, but it looks beautiful, and I must go out there at some point.
We planted the seed now, so
you have.
I think we're gonna have to come and visit one day, and we'll have a sit down and do a video. Who knows?
That would be wonderful. I mean, the seed's just been planted for me. I think it's been in my wife's mind for a very long time.
Good, excellent.
It shouldn't be a challenging conversation to say, "Hey, would you like to go to Bali?"
Exactly. Tourism is opening up. Come on down. To show you around.
Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again someday, and hopefully making that video in Bali.
And I just want to say I really appreciate you. If when I do share this with our community, you have such a big heart and a great soul, I can tell, and you're on your way to helping a lot of people. So if other people get the chance, please go ahead and follow the links below, I guess, when there's links. But thank you for everything that you do as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Speak soon.